Hey guys, what's up? Dingo Crikey here with another commentary video, and in this one I'm going to be discussing some potential plot details for Transformers 5. Now what I'm going to be discussing in this video all comes from a YouTube video posted by the YouTube channel Joe Blow Trailers, where the narrator talks about supposedly exclusive plot details on Transformers 5. At this point we don't know how they've been given the plot details, we don't know how they got them, the video isn't sourced. You guys can check out the video yourself, it will be linked in the description below. Right now I'm just going to go point by point through everything mentioned and kind of discuss and analyze it, and then in the end I'll give some general thoughts on these rumors as a whole. Anyways, the first point we have is that Optimus is going to find Cybertron, which is of course a dead planet, and Optimus was apparently responsible for destroying it. Now right off the bat this sounds kind of weird to me, and mind you, these are just going to be my personal speculations, my own analysis. I could be wrong, but right away I'm asking, wasn't Cybertron destroyed in Dark of the Moon? Because that appeared to be the case at the end of the film when they destroyed the pillars, closed the space bridge. It looked a lot like Cybertron was being destroyed. Now there have already been a number of theories on this. Was Cybertron really destroyed or not? A lot of people think maybe it was just half of the planet, the other half is still intact. I'm sure if that were the case, scientifically there would be some problems with it, and I'm not an expert on it, but you know, just you'd have half of the planet, would it still be able to do its rotations and all of that? Not really sure. In any case though, it's science fiction. You know, the Transformers universe, outside of just the movies, obviously does a lot of unrealistic things, so to say just half of the planet was destroyed and it's still somewhat operational, I don't think is too far of a stretch, so I'll give them that. But one of the other things I was confused about is why Optimus is going to Cybertron. At the end of Age of Extinction, we were under the impression that he was looking for the creators. Now he might be going to Cybertron to look for some answers, maybe hoping to find an ancient archive or something of the sorts. I always figured that he would look inside of the Matrix, similar to what Rodimus did in Generation 1, and figure out who the creators were, or at least get some hints to their location. I'm also kind of confused how he will make it to Cybertron so quickly. He doesn't have a space bridge, but in the first film we did see after Bumblebee sent off his distress beacon, the Autobots were able to make it there in a timely manner. Now I always figured they were kind of navigating around in space anyways, or something of the sorts. I didn't think they were still on Cybertron, but that's just personal speculation, wasn't really made clear in the film, so I guess this whole plot of him finding Cybertron is plausible. The part about Optimus being responsible for Cybertron's destruction is also kind of interesting, especially when they say Cybertron's destruction, because I think we were given the impression, other than in Dark of the Moon when the planet was kind of destroyed, or at least apparently, which Optimus wouldn't be responsible for, that the Autobots and Decepticons just kind of through their war back and forth ended up destroying much of the planet and, you know, killing off both races of Transformers, and they didn't have an Allspark to create new life. Nevertheless, they were always kind of unclear on what exactly happened on Cybertron. They're very vague about it. We just knew that there was the Autobot and Decepticon war, and it led to the planet being ravaged. So maybe they're using destruction just loosely to say Cybertron's in a really bad state, you know, it's all war-torn, and Optimus was somehow responsible for it. That could be the case, and I guess it would be interesting finding out how Optimus was responsible. Though personally, I'm not crazy about this idea of Optimus being at the center of everything, which they really seem to have been pushing since Transformers Prime and now since Age of Extinction. Anyways though, the next plot point says that he learns he can resurrect Cybertron, but will need to find some artifact on Earth to do so. This sounds kind of weird, but also like it fits in with what we've seen in the movies. On one hand, I'm thinking, well, what about the creators? Isn't Optimus supposed to be looking for them? You know, if he's going to end up on Earth again, why send him into space in Age of Extinction and kind of do that tease in the first place? But on the other hand, maybe they wanted to give us a little bit of footage on Cybertron, which we'll probably see Optimus on Cybertron, figure all this out, then back on Earth, they can cut to the scenes with Bumblebee, and we'll see him leading the Autobots for a while until Optimus returns. So maybe they'll kind of, you know, half do the space story and, you know, have the other half all on Earth once Optimus arrives. It seems really weird to me that the creators are being left out of all of this, considering they seem like they were really going to be the focal point of Transformers 5, at least in my opinion. Now, as far as an ancient Transformer artifact being on Earth, something that's very important for the Autobots to find, that doesn't surprise me at all, and that seems very within the realm of what we've seen in the previous Transformers films. Now next, we have the idea that the artifact ties into the Merlin of King Arthur lore, and that apparently his magical powers were given to him by a Transformer. And then the narrator kind of speculates that the artifact we'd be looking at, the focus of the film, would be the sword Excalibur. And that makes sense. You know, if they're going to have Merlin in the films, going to tie Transformers lore in with that, Excalibur being King Arthur's sword makes perfect sense, because we already have the knight theme, we have Optimus with the sword, it even looks like in the logo there's a new sword we're seeing, so maybe it is supposed to be Excalibur. I'm guessing if they're going to tie in, that would be the case. And once again, this does sound kind of weird, because on one hand I'm thinking, we're the creators, there's really no mention of Galvatron in the plot, but as far as ancient artifacts and human lore and Transformers lore tying together, really seems similar to what we've seen in the previous Transformers films. I would also like to mention that Stonehenge has been named as a possible filming location for Transformers 5, and Stonehenge is part of certain King Arthur lore. Anyways, the next point mentions what returning characters we will see. Drift, Crosshairs, Hound, Optimus, and Bumblebee will all be returning, and Bumblebee will be in a leadership role, and we'll see the Autobots making their home in the Badlands of South Dakota. Now, this sounds very probable in regards to these characters returning, but if this rumor is true, it's also cool to know that these guys will be returning and won't just be dropped off as previous Transformers cast members have been. And like a lot of us predicted, Bumblebee being in a leadership role, I know a lot of people aren't really happy about this, you know, if it is true. Personally, I think it's cool. I like him as the leader in Robots in Disguise. I think it's always nice to see a different twist, and they're finally doing something a little bit different with this character. I mean, he's basically been in the same role for the first 4 films. Now, it did disappoint me that there was no mention of Age of Extinction absent Autobots such as Dino or Sideswipe, but even if these rumors are true, I still don't think it necessarily means we won't see these characters. For example, there's no mention of Wheelie here, and from some recently revealed images, like on set, it looks like we're going to actually see Wheelie returning, even though he was absent in Age of Extinction. He's not mentioned here. What I'm thinking is that this might be referring to our core group of Autobots, in particular Drift, Crosshairs, Hound, and Bumblebee as the Earth group, and Optimus, you know, kind of being in that group even though he's not present with them. So if we see other Autobots return later on in the film, it just might not be including them in this lineup, or maybe they're going to make it a surprise. I mean, this is a little bit discouraging towards the idea of seeing them again, but I don't think that it means there's no chance. I mean, even if they're not in this film or Transformers 6, I mean, Barricades has returned after some pretty long absences. Who knows, maybe they'll bring them in later on down the road. Anyways, next bit of information we have is that the Dinobots will be returning with the addition of mini Dinobots. This one's pretty surprising to me if it is true, because I honestly didn't see the Dinobots returning in Transformers 5, and if they did return, I expected them to have a pretty small role. I thought they were going to be kind of just the big feature for Age of Extinction, and then they would kind of just forget about them, or maybe bring them in later on down the road in a future movie. Not too much to say there. If they are bringing them back, I guess it would be cool if they developed their personalities a little bit more and gave them voices. What is interesting is the mention of mini Dinobots. Now, what's interesting to me is that if you look at some of the concept art for Age of Extinction, you can actually see what would probably be these mini Dinobots running alongside of Scorn as he's entering the city, and they look very similar to the Slash figure, and not in color, but in the way they're Velociraptor-esque, and they have the spikes all over them. You know, they basically look like Slash, and this is what came to my mind when I heard mini Dinobots. Now, why this doesn't really sound legitimate to me is that I've seen a lot of concept art being used as evidence for new characters in future films, when it could have been from the 2007 movie, like concept art for Optimus Prime, like really early concept art where he was all blue. Someone could be saying, oh look, this is the new design for Ultra Magnus, and I'm wondering, is that sort of what they're doing here? Now, obviously, that speculation could be wrong. Maybe those mini Dinobots were something they really wanted to include in Age of Extinction. They weren't able to do it. So, you know, they really want those mini Dinobots, and they're going to put them into Transformers 5. I mean, yeah, I guess that's probable too. Anyways, moving on to the next point. This one deals with Transformers with English origins. One of them is called the Creator, who is said to have ties to the origin of the Transformers, and the other two are called Cogman and Squeaks. As far as the latter characters, personally I think this sounds cool. Two Transformers with English origins, and these names are kind of unique ones. They're new characters. I'm sure some people aren't going to be happy about this because they want to see old characters recreated. I do like seeing old characters, you know, with the movie take on them, but I don't like only seeing those characters repeated. I definitely like seeing some new ones, and the premise for these characters sounds kind of cool, especially if it's, you know, Anthony Hopkins who could be voicing them, as the narrator of the video speculates. As far as the guy being called the Creator, I'll probably sound like an idiot if this turns out to be true, but this honestly sounds like a piece of fan fiction to me. The fact that he's called the Creator after we had the mention of the creators in Transformers Age of Extinction, who, if they were related in some way to those aliens in the beginning of the films, clearly did not appear to be Transformers. Yet we have this Transformer who's on Earth, in London or the United Kingdom somewhere, has presumably, at least from the information we have so far, just been on Earth this whole time, and is called the Creator when we know there are creators out there. I don't know, it just sounds really weird to me. For him to be one of the original Transformers, let's say like Vector Prime, who in Transformers Cybertron was like one of the very, very first, but this just sounds weird, and, you know, I could be wrong about it, but it really makes me question these rumors. And that brings me to the last point, and that is basically mentioning that Megatron will return and that his alternate mode would be a fighter jet. I mean, initially, if I just heard Megatron was going to return, you know, I would think this had to be false, but obviously at this point we know that Megatron is going to return in some form, as it's been confirmed by Michael Bay. Right now I'm thinking maybe that could be a flashback, maybe Megatron's body's resurrected, or I'll have a Q&A where I discuss those possibilities coming up later on in the week. But in any case, the Megatron thing isn't too weird. Altogether though, my closing thoughts on this: do I think this is legitimate? I mean, it very well could be. Even some of the things that seem to contradict what was established in the previous films. You know, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen some things screw with the continuity, especially now since we have new writers on board. Maybe they don't like some of the things that the previous film set up, and they just plan to rewrite it. Maybe that's the plan. At this point, these rumors don't sound legitimate to me. From the whole Cybertron situation, Optimus going there, no mention really of the creators outside of this character called the Creator, to even the fact that Wheelie, who we now know is going to be returning, isn't really mentioned here, which I mentioned could be explained in some other way. You know, Barricade isn't mentioned as returning, and ultimately there's no source on any of this information, so we have no way of knowing it's true. I mean, maybe the guy who put this together just got misinformation. Maybe he's not out there to deceive anyone, just kind of got misinformed about some things. I don't really know at this point. I don't think this stuff's true. And even the things with the King Arthur lore and like Stonehenge, some things seem to kind of tie in and fit quite well. I mean, someone could have just looked at what we have so far and maybe figured it would fit in pretty well with King Arthur lore and decided to put this rumor out there. Anyways, that's all I have to say for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you can keep up with the channel for more regular Transformers 5 news and commentary. You can also go to the channel for lots of cool Transformers stuff that's already there, such as commentary and discussion videos, figure reviews, all sorts of stuff like that. You can also follow me on Twitter for regular updates. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching, stay tuned, and have a good one, guys. I'll see you soon.